Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. This is a non-judgmental place to explore spirituality, and we're so glad you're here. This is a viewer and listener-supported podcast, so we greatly appreciate your support. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, share, and subscribe to any of the social media content platforms that you're using. And then if you go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, you can make a one-time donation, or with a monthly subscription, you'll gain access to our bonus content. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality Adventures. We're glad you're tuning in with us this time. Today, we have Matthew Kohler with us. And it's interesting. Matthew and I just recently met, like within the last month, just a couple of weeks ago, actually, as we're recording this. We were down at a men's retreat with a bunch of guys that are, some of the guys that put it on are connected to the National Prayer Breakfast, which I've been connected to for almost 15 or so years. And I went down to this retreat for the first time last year in the Lake of the Ozarks, but went again this year and met Matthew. And he introduced himself and mentioned that he was a do you use the word coach? For manager for bare knuckle fighters. which immediately drew my attention. I said, "Oh, I got to meet this guy," and so I'm, so we had a few chats, and I was so interested in your world of bare knuckle fighting. All right,
yeah.
So I invite him on the podcast, right? And so thanks for joining.
Yeah, man.
And we'll mention it again, but Matthew also does a podcast called Bare Knuckle Insiders. And you can catch that on Facebook, and YouTube is Bare Knuckle Insiders. Facebook is what now?
So it's actually, you can find everything under Fight Mixer. So if you just put Fight Mixer in the search bar for either Facebook or YouTube, you're gonna find us, and that's our main page.
All right. So I want to first talk a little bit about your story, your personal story and history and stuff like that. And then we'll get to bare knuckle fighting. But I love your setup here with the Rock'em Sock'em robots. I'm 61. So, I mean, like I probably got one of those for Christmas one year and probably tore it up.
Yeah.
I don't know where it went.
It's a classic.
That's awesome. So tell us where you grew up and a little bit about your family background.
Yeah. So I grew up in central Missouri. And I say in central Missouri because my family really kind of bounced around a lot. Not a lot, but a little bit. My dad was a teacher when I was a kid. And so started out in California, Missouri. My dad was taught driver's ed. And he coached. He was a varsity girls basketball coach at California High School.
Wow!
And he was one of the assistant football coaches and taught driver's ed. So he always he wanted to be in administration, though, of course. So when I was I went to we lived there until I was 6. And then moved to Russellville, Missouri, where my dad took his first school principal's job. And we were there for a few years, and then moved to Versailles, Missouri, where he took another principal's job. And I was there from between 5th grade and sophomore year of high school. And so that's really, and most of my family is from that area and lives there. So I say that area of the Lake of the Ozarks is what I really consider home.
Interesting.
But then moved one more time to finish out my last couple years of high school. So
where was that?
Jamestown, Missouri, which is a really, really small town in the Missouri River bottoms between Columbia and Jefferson City.
Okay. So, how many were in your graduating class?
Oh boy, it's going to blow you away. 14.
Wow.
Yeah.
So were you the valedictorian?
No. No, I was not. I did do pretty well in school because my dad was the principal. And
Yeah,
so like making A's wasn't an option. And if I didn't make an A, I better have a dang good reason.
that's funny.
But no, I wasn't the valedictorian, but it was definitely weird being the new kid in that small of a tight knit group who had all
I
pretty much
bet.
been together since kindergarten. So
Wow, interesting.
I was used to being the new kid, but that was a whole nother level.
My former wife, who her mom was my mother-in-law and she passed a few years ago, but she was my mother-in-law for a long, long time, and she was from California, Missouri.
Okay.
And her maiden name was Bolin. Bolin.
Okay. Yeah.
And I've been to California, Missouri to visit the Bolins in California, Missouri.
Yep. We know some of the Bolins.
Crossed paths with them or not.
Oh yeah.
Those would be some of my
Small
former relatives by marriage, right? So any rate, yeah. Well, and yeah, small world. I always find it funny that Mexico, Missouri, California, Missouri, Paris, Missouri. You can you can visit the world right within
you can,
Missouri,
right here. Don't even have to leave the state.
So I'm curious, what did you do right after high school? Were you college? Did you go to college?
Yep.
Did you?
Yep.
Okay.
So I did go to college. I went to school right out of high school, went to Westminster College in Fulton, Missouri.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Wow. There was a famous speech given there one time.
Yeah. Yeah. Winston Churchill gave the Iron Curtain speech in the gymnasium there in Fulton, Missouri at Westminster College. Yeah. They have a piece of the Berlin Wall up there. It's pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Well, when that thing fell, that's so anyway. Yeah. That's a fascinating piece of history. So, I'm curious because we did a bonus round with you that some of our patrons and supporters listen to, but I found out that you were a music guy, which I didn't know that. I just found that out. So I'm kind of curious, like you go to college, you're into music, but so how did music emerge, and then how did your fight career emerge out of this mixture of small town Missouri, college in Missouri, that kind of thing?
That's sort of a loaded question. Those are, so I went to college. I went to Westminster my first year of school, and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to be involved in music, but music as a major was not available at Westminster College, and so I decided to pursue a degree in music business, which is sort of like a business degree with an emphasis on the music industry. And what I didn't realize at the time was that that's not a real degree. It's literally not. Like, it might be somewhere else, but there it was just essentially a liberal arts degree, and they were just like, yeah, we'll do that for you. Pay us the money, and we'll slap this music business degree name on it for you. But like, at the end of the day, it was nothing. Not there's anything wrong with a liberal arts degree, but I didn't understand the difference at the time. And so my second year of college, I ended up accepting a scholarship, a choir scholarship, to go to down the road here to Jefferson City to Lincoln University.
Oh, wow.
So had the opportunity to be with them.
And Lincoln is like a historic Black college, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah,
wow.
It is. Yeah.
I've got a buddy, one of my close pastor friends here in Kansas City, Missouri, that pastors a historic Black church, and he went to Lincoln on football scholarship. So he's been a friend a long time. But at any rate, it's the only reason why I knew that.
Yeah. So I took a music scholarship and had the opportunity to go out and do some fun things with the Lincoln University vocal ensemble. And got to do a national tour with them, which was really cool.
It sounds so opposite of bare knuckle fighters.
I know, right? I know. But I grew up in the world of martial arts. So from the time I was 5 years old, I started taking, learning martial arts, and then
did your dad enroll you in that, or did you just?
My parents did. Yeah. Both my mom and my dad enrolled me in the first classes I took were Taekwondo when I was 5. And then by the time I was 9, I was a black belt.
Wow.
And so, and I, and then really, really got into the competition side of it. So much so that my mom started competing, started getting into it.
Really?
My mom went on to be a women's Taekwondo world champion in 1997.
Are you kidding?
No, that's a true story.
Crazy.
Yeah. So
wow.
Pretty neat. And then from there, we opened up a couple of martial arts schools that my family owned. So I got the opportunity to teach and still continue.
So you're doing that the whole way through college?
No, so I stopped competing. I mean, I competed a little bit, but really, like, I was pursuing national championships, up to the point where I was about 16 years old.
Okay.
In
Taekwondo?
In Taekwondo, yeah.
Okay.
But I was still doing, some other kickboxing open tournaments and things like that. And I wrestled too. But I always just loved that one-on-one, that competition, that, me versus you combat situation, just test your mettle. I just found it exhilarating, thrilling, fun. But by the time I was about 16, I realized that, I was kind of interested in having a social life. And, and I didn't, because up to that point, I had, every single weekend, almost every single weekend of my childhood, we're on the road driving across the country to go to some tournament.
Right.
And so I started slowing down at that point. Not to say that I quit competing totally, because I still did some things after that. But just wanted to play football, wanted to play basketball, and focus a little more on that stuff. And had, wanted to have friends, stuff like that. So
interesting.
So
you laid off of that through college?
I did.
And that's where your music career kind of took off a little bit, or accelerated, or
it's so
whatever
crazy. I know it sounds like a lot. It was, but when I was about 16, that's when I started touring with a Southern gospel quartet. So my dad asked me to fill in because their lead singer of their Southern gospel quartet had moved out of town. And so I jumped on, and it was supposed to be temporary as a fill-in, and I ended up staying for 4 years.
What was the name of that group?
So the name of that group was the Sweet Harmony Boys.
Okay. my dad listens to my podcast, and he's 87, and he is a massive, gospel quartet.
Oh,
Southern
really?
Gospel fan. Holy crap.
Oh man. It's whole
my dad's going to love you already, just cause.
Oh yeah. Well, I had the opportunity to tour with some of the really great ones, and meet some really neat people in the industry.
Well,
that was a blessing.
He could talk to you for a few hours about that.
Oh, I bet, but I continued to, do what I could to tour with them my first 2 years of college. And then so after my second year of college, I had the opportunity to join up with a band, a Southern gospel band called Firm Foundation. And they were a nationally touring group who had just recently been offered a record and distribution deal, but they needed a new vocalist, and so they gave me a call. I came on, I accepted the role, and at that time I also had just gotten married, and when I was 20 years old.
Yeah, so you're still in college.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I dropped out of school at that point. I said, okay, I'm going to go pursue the music thing.
Okay.
And so I had to put school on hold to go out and.
What year was that?
2000. It was, I guess, the end of 2006.
Was that the year you got married?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So I got married in the first time in May of 2006.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yep. And
All
then
right.
spent the entire year of 2007 touring full time.
Wow. Like you do, how many nights a week were you out of the year kind of thing?
So I know that, I don't know what the exact number was, but I know that in 2007 we did in excess of 240 shows.
That's intense.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
Do you have a bus that you toured in, or
sometimes we had a bus, and sometimes we had a van with a trailer, just depending on where we're going, because those buses are just, they're so unreliable. If they break down, you're just stuck. So
were you doing churches or like concerts?
We did all kinds of stuff. Yeah, we did churches, we did festivals, we did concert venues. We did. I mean, you think if you want to book us, we're coming. Basically.
That's cool. Wow. Yeah. What an experience.
Yeah, it was neat.
Yeah. So how long did you do the music thing, and then how did you get back into the fighting scene?
Yes. So I did. I toured for about a year and a half full time with them. And then, I think for a number of reasons, I just decided that that's not what I wanted to do. The idea of touring and living that lifestyle sounds great in principle, and it's fun for like a couple months, but then after you've done it for a year, day in, day out, never home, never relax, on a bus or in a band with four or five other dudes all the time, it just got to be a lot. Yeah. And I'm just like, you know what? I just didn't think that's what I wanted to do. So I just decided to step back. And that was, I think, the idea at the time was, well, maybe I'll come back to this later, but I just never did. Never pursued it any further in any form, other than I did manage some bands and some music artists, and I did some industry work, as a songwriter and things like that. But never. What
was your faith background? What kind of did you grow up in a certain type of a church environment kind of thing? Your dad was a principal, school guy, all that.
He was, but principal and then turned pastor.
So really?
He was both. Yeah. So, but no, I was raised in a Southern Baptist church.
Okay.
Pretty traditional Southern Baptist church. For the most part. So.
Yeah, I was ordained Southern Baptist.
Okay.
I went to Baylor, and I went to Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. And then I ended up in a different movement. I started a church in the Vineyard movement in 1990 and pastored that church for 29 years. But my parents, raised me in the Baptist world, and a lot of dear friends from that world. So,
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So interesting. So, so you're kind of like you're a PK kid whose parents were taking you to martial arts stuff and following you around the world for Fight Club. That's fascinating. So how did you, as an adult now, then you got out of the music world, and did you? I mean, you kind of probably jumped into a little bit of just a kind of a career path for paying your bills, but it seems to me like your passion is in this, is in the world of bare knuckle fighting. I've listened to some of your podcasts, and your energy is contagious. It's fun to hear you talk about it.
Thank you.
You can tell it's a big passion of yours. And so I want to kind of dive into that world some, but I
really do enjoy it. I went back. So ultimately I came back, I just started working. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I just started working, ended up falling into restaurant management, which I did that for a few years. And then I got into some retail management for a long time. I was worked in the corporate retail management world for about 8 years. But a friend of mine was a professional boxer, a guy that that grew up in the same town as I did. And he had been doing pretty well. I was following his career. I'd been to a couple of his fights. And just,
was he a big name, or was he, what weight class was he?
He's a heavyweight, and
Okay.
no, I mean, not a big name.
Okay.
Of course, everybody knew him and his family. They were a boxing family with, some of his cousins had been professional boxers and done pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And so everyone knew of the Shoemaker family in this area. But like I said, I knew that he had been doing pretty well. He was undefeated as a pro boxer at the time. And then I start seeing these posts on social media about a bare knuckle fighting event that's getting ready to happen. This was back in 2018. There was a bare knuckle fighting event that was going to happen in Wyoming. And come to find out, my friend had gone to the tryouts in Philadelphia. He filled out an application, submitted his professional boxing record, and they flew him out to do the tryouts. And it was pretty cool because he pretty quickly became the face of the organization, the face of the sport. Right from the get-go, he was the first breakout star in the sport of bare knuckle boxing or bare knuckle fighting. And it all started with the punch meter, which is kind of legend or sort of part of the lore of the sport now. Mm-hmm. But they had a punch meter to measure measure how hard you can hit. And I don't think anyone else, or very few people, broke 1,000. And Sam came up and hit the thing and measured in at 1,700 psi.
Chew.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was 1,700 with his right hand and 1,400 with his left.
Gee.
And so, no one else. I think maybe a couple people got over 1,000, but that's, if 1,700 pounds per square inch of force hit your car, it would push your car in. So
wow.
He quickly became, the talk of the tryouts, and then the first legal event in 130 years takes place in Wyoming, and he breaks the world record for the fastest knockout in the history of bare knuckle boxing. So, which was pretty cool.
And what's his name?
His name is Sam Shoemaker.
Sam, yeah.
Yeah, you can check him out, Sam the Hillbilly Hammer Shoemaker. But at that point, as he starts to blow up, he and I talked, and come to find out he needed a little bit of help with some media stuff and some marketing and just help on the business end of the industry. Mm-hmm. And so I said, hey, I never really done anything like that, but shoot, let's give it a try. And come to find out, I wasn't bad at it, and had a lot of fun doing it. So that's where it started.
That's cool. Yeah. I've kind of got this weird, I think I had one fight when I was like 5 or 6, and I got so nervous and anxious about it. It's a long story. I won't tell it, but I never got another fight again, and so I wasn't really a fighter. But I grew up, watching boxing. I mean, I grew up watching Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, and all these greats, and Sugar Ray Leonard. I was fascinated with it, and then of course at school wrestled, and then in college I took karate for my deal and got into Shotokan there, but it was like katas, and we did sparring and we did contest, but it wasn't full contact stuff. I never did any full contact stuff, but I got into the art of the karate stuff and so I've always kind of had this, and yet, personally, I'm kind of a pacifist, Jesus follower, pacifist kind of guy, so, but I have this, I've never, and then at my church, I'm a cyclist. Like I've been a competitive cyclist for a few decades. And, amateur stuff, but still it's a serious hobby. I still ride and compete. And so I would tell competitive cycling stories in my sermons, which as my church grew, it just seemed that I would start collecting athletes. So, I'd have cyclists at my church. I had MMA fighters at my church. I had UFC fighters. I had personal trainers. I had, and it's not like but I had a contingency of sort of people that were just in the sports world that that sort of gravitated, I had some of the soccer players from in town. I had a Chiefs player coming once. I had, just, I don't know. So I was always, and then we had a guys group that would do like cigar and whiskey thing and watch, UFC fights because we had all these different, small groups and stuff like that. So I would always, they would do a pay-per-view thing, and it was just, anyway. So I've always kind of had this interesting, and I remember, and I think I told you this in 2018, maybe, there was an article that came out in either Outside Magazine or Men's Journal when bare knuckle fighting first became legal in the United States. Mm-hmm. And I read that article and was just fascinated by it on a number of accounts, because first of all, it gave some history of bare knuckle fighting. And I'd love for you to give us a little 101 on bare knuckle fighting, maybe even relate it, because you got your boxing federations, you got your MMA stuff, you got your UFC stuff. And for most of us, we don't even understand the difference with a lot of that, Yeah. It's just all fighting, and then, but then as well, now this bare knuckle fighting thing has come on the scene just recently, really. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'd love it if you'd kind of dive in, give us a little history of some of that. Give us, it sounds like Sam was kind of the article might have even been on Sam.
It's possible that it could have mentioned him because he was mentioned in the beginning. I mean, he was the big star that broke out.
Yeah, it gave history, but it also talked about it. It spent quite a bit of time talking about how bare knuckle fighting is actually safer than glove boxing in terms of, injuries and stuff like that. So all of that I just found fascinating.
It is fascinating. And so that, now that we have 4 years of data, all of these injury reports. So back then in those articles, it was hard to get it. It was hard. It was all based on theory, right? And the theory was solid, but there was no data. But now we have data, and the data is showing that there are less net injuries in the sport of bare knuckle than in either boxing, kickboxing, or mixed martial arts. And
give us a little 101 history in America, kind of on boxing, MMA, and UFC, and then bare knuckle. Just just like a short version for people who don't really know this world too much.
Yep. So before they introduced gloves into boxing. Boxing was bare knuckle boxing. Bare knuckle boxing was boxing. And
like all through the 1800s kind of thing, all through 1900s,
through the 17 and hundreds, up into the 1800s. But the introduction of gloves, it was sold, the idea was sold that, okay, this is going to make it safer for the athletes, because, add some padding so that you're not getting hit with a bare fist. And the reality is that it had nothing to do with that, and it was the idea of the safety by adding the gloves had nothing to do with head injuries, and had everything to do with protecting the fighter's hands so that they could fight more often and make more money for the promoters.
Gotcha. What year was that?
That would have been probably late early 1900s.
Okay.
By the early 1900s, it was pretty much universally adopted, and in most states, bare knuckle had become illegal at that time. But again, it's all so political.
Yeah. When did women enter the sport of boxing?
That's a good question, because if you look back into the history of bare knuckle boxing, and I'm not going to be able to tell you their names, but there were some pretty legendary women's bare knuckle boxing matches that happened in the 17 and 1800s here in the United States. And there were some pretty prolific women's fighters back then. Yeah.
Because you manage some women, right?
Yeah. Right, I do work with some women. And I've taken.
Let's get to that, but let's stick on the history just a little bit, and then we'll get to your current.
So, that was the
boxing, gloved, bare knuckle becomes illegal.
The transition, bare knuckle becomes and then of course, then you have.
When did MMA and UFC emerge?
Yep. So all of that started. Boxing was the dominant sport for the longest time, and then I think that MMA probably evolved out of. If you remember back in the day, they would have like tough man competitions at like county fairs. I don't know if you recall that, but that was a thing where it was just winner take all, and you go in no rules fighting in, inside of a ring. And so I think that the idea probably evolved out of that, these local tough man competitions. But the whole idea when mixed martial arts started was, or the way that it was pitched with you when at the beginning of UFC was, what style is going to win over the other style? What is the best style of fighting? And so you would have these different fighters from all kinds of different martial arts disciplines. And so you would have the boxer versus the jujitsu practitioner, or the kickboxer versus the karate master, or whatever. And it's like, that was the whole idea was, or the shoot fighter versus the, whatever. And there were no weight classes at the time. It was just all about, because there was so much emphasis put on what is the best and most efficient style of fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what they found over time is that they all have unique positive characteristics and things that can be taken, that you can take a piece from this and a piece from that and a little bit from this and a little bit from that. And then you combine all those together and you have the sport of mixed martial arts. And here we are today. Yeah.
And wasn't there a time when MMA was legal, then it wasn't, and then it emerged back into being a legal sanctioned sport? Is that right? Or
it was only legal in certain states, much like what we're seeing in bare knuckle, in the world of bare knuckle today.
Okay. Which years was it when it first started becoming a legal sanctioned sport for MMA? Was that in the
MMA
90s or
yeah,
earlier?
it would have been the I would say the early 90s, early to mid 90s.
Yeah. And wasn't it like, who were the guys from Iowa or something like that were like really, like they learned from the jiu-jitsu guys and then they brought that into MMA, and then because it was like you had to get good at those, because as soon as you tie up a kicker or a boxer, he's done. He's done.
Well, the first big the winner of UFC 1 was a guy named Royce Gracie.
Yeah, the great.
Yeah,
wasn't he from Iowa, or didn't he wrestle at Iowa or something like that? I can't remember.
I don't think so. I'm not sure. He's Brazilian. It's
okay.
But
okay. Well, he brought it to America, though, right?
Yeah.
Is he the one that brought it to America?
Yep.
And then I think some of these Iowa wrestlers picked up on, or so, I don't know. Anyway,
that's highly possible. I don't know that story.
Okay.
But I do know that when the jiu-jitsu practitioners came in, there was nothing anyone could do about it. You had to learn it.
You had
to learn it. Otherwise they can do whatever they want to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
pretty interesting.
So yeah, that is so interesting. And then what's the difference between MMA and UFC?
Well, MMA is the sport itself, mixed martial arts, and UFC is a promotion of mixed martial arts, and they're the dominant, largest, most popular promotion of mixed martial arts that exists.
All right. Same sport, just
same
sport.
Wants
a promotional arm of it. Yeah.
Yep.
So how did bare knuckle fighting emerge out of, like, how did it even start getting the foothold that it got? And now you're telling me it's like literally one of the fastest growing sports in the world now.
It is. I think that there were a number of people who were pushing for this for a long time. I know a couple of the folks personally who were really driving the effort to get this off the ground and get it legalized and get it and really make it a legitimate sport. And a couple of those guys, probably the one that most people are going to be most familiar with is a guy named David Feldman. He's the owner of Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships, and he gets a lot of the credit. But I think even he would tell you that there were so many others that were part of that effort. And it was over a period of a very long time. And a lot of it started by doing some bare knuckle fighting events on native land and in casinos and things like that. So it wasn't necessarily illegal because you're on native land and you can do it there. But then to take it from that to something that's a nationally televised event and mainstream it and not, it was a whole thing. And so I think that he felt that one of the biggest steps was to find a state that will say yes to legalizing and sanctioning, and having a sanctioned event by the state athletic commission, and it'd be the first time in 130 years or whatever. And I think he heard no 28 times before he got it from different states before he got a yes. And that it was over the course of about 10 years.
Wow. Which state was the first state?
Wyoming.
Wyoming.
Yeah.
One of those highly populated states in America.
Yep. Well, it's still kind of the Wild West out there.
Yeah, it is. Definitely. I've done some backpacking, fly fishing in Wyoming.
Oh, it's beautiful. It is beautiful.
Gorgeous country.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you got into it because of your connection with Sam Shoemaker.
Yes.
You started working on some promotions for him, marketing stuff.
Yeah, promotion, marketing.
Was that right at the beginning, 2018?
That was probably 2018, 2019, somewhere around there.
So talk about how that's all developed in the last 4 years for you.
We've done some really neat things. So he had a number of really great sponsorships, lots of support from a lot of different businesses. But we've developed some product lines for him, over time. And I think my favorite is Hillbilly Hammer beer, which is actually a really good hazy IPA. You can get it down in the Lake of the Ozarks area. Pretty neat. I should have brought some to Kinderhook. I totally forgot about it.
Right.
Next year we will.
That was the men's retreat. Yeah.
But we've done a lot of neat things, and I've just keep forming relationships with people, and it all started just being in contact with media people because if you wanted to book Sam for an interview or whatever, it would go through me. And so I start forming relationships with all of these different people in the industry and going to the events. And it's like a family. It's a really tight knit community. And it's kind of strange because once you're in, and everybody knows who you are and you know everybody. And it's in the combat sports world, it's a very small world. It's smaller than what you think, as far as the insiders. And that's why I named my podcast The Insiders, because I feel like everybody, all of those people are the insiders. It's like my people now, right?
Yeah.
My group. And so over time, just meeting different people in the media side of the sport and in the management side of the sport and different promoters and just networking and relationships, and keep getting things thrown at me. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that sounds fun. Yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah. So you're managing some boxers then? More than one or?
So I've taken a little bit of a step back from the management side. I've scaled that back quite a bit. There was a time when I was managing, my partners and I were managing in excess of 25 fighters, which was just, it was overwhelming. And it was a lot. And so I still have a few people that I work with, but I like to keep the circle pretty small these days, just simply because, if I'm going to work with somebody, I feel like I really need to give them my best. And if I stretch myself too thin and try to do too much for too many people, then I'm only going to be able to do a little bit for a lot of people.
Okay.
As opposed to the idea of I want to, do whatever you need to be whatever you need to be done. I want that to be done. It's going to be done at a high level, and there's nobody that's going to do a better job than I am. And you're going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, I've stepped back, and I've got a few people that I work with in official capacity, and a few people that are just my people that, if they need somebody that needs something, they know they can call me. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So who are who your co-host on your podcast? What's her name?
Yes. That is Britton O'Bannon.
Okay.
And she's wonderful. She owns another management company. And so I do work with her at times.
Now, did she fight as well?
No.
Okay.
Her husband is a heavyweight bare knuckle fighter named Bobo O'Bannon.
Okay.
And really great guy. I've become such great friends with the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that she's about one of the nicest people you're ever going to meet in your whole life.
Yeah. I listened to one of your recent interviews with, I guess, one of the top female bare knuckle fighters. I forgot her.
Okay.
Forgot her name. She was on, she came on for about 20 minutes or so.
Okay.
She sounded like she could just beat my ass, and she was like ready to tear anybody up. But then your co-host was so just brought out the kind side to her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So interesting. What was that gal's name that she was like one of the, who are some of the big names right now, both on the men and women's side?
Well, of course, the women's champion at 125 pounds is Christine Faria.
Yeah, that's who it was. Yeah. So, I listened to that interview. Yeah.
Yep. So, and Christine's amazing. She's actually one of my best friends. She's I have managed her. She's been a client. She's just, she's on a completely different level, but, super interesting. So I would say that and I think that she's going to be the champion as long as she wants to be the champion.
That's what you said.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow.
Yep. So she's had an impressive run.
I've always been drawn to, the tough chicks, whether it's Wonder Woman or Alias or,
absolutely.
You just name them.
Absolutely. Yeah. But there's some great champions right now. Of course, you've got the heavyweight champion at the moment is a guy named Arnold Adams, who is on a pretty good run at the moment and looking really good. There are some UFC veterans that are coming that are stepping away from mixed martial arts and coming over to the sport of bare knuckle, including Alan Belcher is now here. He was a pretty big UFC star for a while, at a heavyweight or light. He may have been cruiserweight in UFC. And then Big Ben Rothwell's another one, big UFC star that has just come over. There's a lot of really talented athletes coming over from UFC and other promotions.
And you say it's growing worldwide. So how is it?
It is.
How many states is it legal in right now in America?
I don't know the exact number of that. I want to say it's about half the states.
Half the states.
It may be a little bit more than half the states have legalized.
And then was it legal always in other countries, or why is it growing so fast in other countries now as well?
I think that when you have to have somebody prove the concept on a big enough scale. And if you do that, regardless of where it happens, people are going to say, oh, I want to do that.
Yeah. America's such a big market. It tends to, things get picked up around the world.
Exactly. And the American media market also has a tendency to suck in viewership from all over the world.
Right.
Because everyone pays attention to what we do here in the States. And so when that happens, then other folks are going to follow suit, like, oh, wow, that worked. Cool. I'm going to try that here. So, and you see that in just about every industry.
Are there certain countries that are picking up on it? Like, are there 2 or 3 or 4 other countries that are accelerating faster than the other countries?
Yep. So, I mean, obviously, the sport was really born in the UK. I mean, it's the birthplace of bare knuckle boxing. And so there's been another organization where it's been legal, and there's been another promotion called BKB, Bare Knuckle Boxing, that has been up and running out there in Great Britain for several years before it was here in the United States. Now, as far as growth and traction and real mainstream explosion. They never got that. But they're also continuing to grow with the sport. And so we're seeing that. And now, of course, BKFC is out there. There's another American promotion that is teamed up with BKB. So I'm really excited about that. And then you're looking at, there are other organizations popping up in Russia. The sport is growing. In Thailand, the sport is growing. You've seen a lot of Muay Thai fighters that are coming over and wanting to try this out. A lot of the Eastern European countries are little promotions are starting to pop up, and it's really interesting to see it all happen too.
Yeah.
Because everyone's got a different concept in the new sport. So I think it's going to be neat to, sort of like when UFC started, to watch it really mold and develop into what ultimately it was going to be, because I don't think we've seen exactly what it's going to be yet.
Right.
And so we're all still watching and waiting and seeing what's going to happen.
My National Prayer Breakfast connection was a friend of mine who, well, you might have met Carl Medeiros at the men's retreat this past where we met. But if you didn't, he's the one that brought me to the prayer breakfast years ago in connection with the Middle East suite. We used to host people from the Middle East, Arab Muslims and Jewish, and kind of an eclectic mix of people, but a lot of Arab Muslims. And but so we did the Middle East suite. We had our own, we had things going on in our suite all the time. And I remember one time Manny Pacquiao, am I saying his name right?
Pacquiao
came in and gave us a little talk in our Middle East suite, and I got to meet him. And I was surprised how short he was, because I'd seen him fight. But I was thinking about his Philippines, right? I was wondering if it's taken off there as well, because you got some pretty big. Well, obviously he's brought a lot of attention to the sport for his country.
I haven't seen anything out there yet, but I mean, I know that between the three most prolific promotions out there right now really are, I think the BKFC Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, or BKFC, is the biggest, by far the biggest promotion right now. But then you have BYB, which is a Florida-based promotion, and BKB, which is over in the UK. And those two organizations have teamed up. So I think that those three organizations pushing the growth of the sport is going to be, you're going to see a lot of expansion all over the world over the next few years. I think that I know, again, I could be wrong, and I'm biased just because I'm a huge fan of it and I'm personally invested, but I think this is the next thing. I think this is the next big thing. And I think that people are going to see that here in the next 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how can people, if they're interested, how can people tune in to bare knuckle fighting? How would you ever see a fight? Because I don't see it on mainstream TVs.
Right. So, I think that you will hear very shortly. I think within the next few years that one or more of these promotions will have a very prolific. I don't know if prolific is the right word, but they'll have a mainstream television network deal, and I'm told that deal is already a done deal. Just working out details is what I'm told. I don't know what the network is, but for right now, in the meantime, you can, if you want to watch BKFC, you can download the BKFC app. Just go to the App Store and download BKFC. Just look up BKFC in the search bar, and you can subscribe to that app and get all of the content and all of the live, past events, exclusive content, and all of the pay-per-view fights live. It's like $5 a month, $4.99 a month for your subscription. They do at least a couple events every month. So it's a pretty darn good value, but maybe even a better value. Just go check out BYB Extreme Fighting Series on YouTube, and you can watch all of their events for free. And they put on some really fantastic fights as well.
And then if you want to join a live group watching one of these,
yeah, come on with us. We do watch parties. We do watch parties sometimes. So if I don't get to go to the event live, I like to do a watch party. And just sort of hang out with my friends in the fight community. A lot of fighters, a lot of really neat fighters will pop on and just hang out with us, and we'll commentate on the fights and have some fun. So.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun way to introduce yourself even to the sport. You can just kind of like be a fly on the wall and listen, right?
Yeah.
Hear guys who really know the sport, guys and gals talking about it. And
absolutely.
Yeah, interesting. Well, cool, man. So give us your your Fight Mixer is where people would connect with you. You do.
Yeah,
how often
absolutely.
do you put a podcast out? You're doing interviews with
so
people in this world quite a bit.
So typically, right now we're on a little bit of a break. So we are adding. So Fight Mixer is actually our network. So we have a little. It's called Fight Mixer TV, really. So we're looking to put out add a number of new programs right now. We have we just wrapped up season 1, Fight Mixer season 1, and on season 1 we had 4 shows that would all air separate nights of the week. We're adding 5 additional new programs, so we'll have a total of 9 programs that air throughout the week, coming out from Fight Mixer. And one of those is my podcast that I host personally called Bare Knuckle Insiders. You can subscribe to Fight Mixer on YouTube or Facebook and check that out on Sunday evenings. We go 8 Eastern, 7 Central, and we'll fire the show back up after Thanksgiving this year.
Okay.
So
all right.
That'll be the launch of season 2.
Okay. And is there in this are there seasons? Like, are there? Is it fight all year round kind of a thing?
Yeah, it's all year round. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's just fights going on all the time. People. All right. And are these held in cities all around America right now?
Yeah.
Like at least in the states where it's legal. Yeah.
So you'll see a lot of
Is Missouri? Is it legal in Missouri?
No, it's not. But I that is a goal of mine. I really want to get that legislation, and I want to be a part of that. I want to get that pushed over the line. So I am talking to some folks, and I think that it can happen, but it's just, the big wheels turn, but sometimes they turn slowly in the world of politics. So yeah, right. Well, at least Jeff City, you're close by. You can go. You can go and knock on some doors, right? Exactly. I know a few people downtown. Yeah. All right. Well, cool, man. Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much for tuning in for jumping on Spirituality Adventures. I appreciate it. I just always, had there would even be local amateur boxing come through here in Kansas City. And I used to go watch that with my father-in-law, because my father-in-law, who passed away many years ago, at the time he had grown up, he was a boxer in the Navy. And so he was he just had a passion for boxing of all levels. And so every now and then I would go see one with him, and see the live amateur boxers come to Kansas City. It was kind of fun. It's always fun. It's always interesting to be there live. Yeah. So, all right. Well, thanks so much. Thanks everybody for tuning into Spirituality Adventures, and check out Matthew Kohler at Fight Mixer and all of the stuff that he's doing. Fun, interesting world. So thanks a bunch. See you next time. This concludes today's episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Remember to like, share, or subscribe to the social media platform that you're using. And then go to our website, spiritualityadventures.com, and make a one-time donation, or you can subscribe monthly and receive our special bonus content. Thanks so much.